You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتلمين هناك لشوارزنيجر.
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Kevin.
Yes, Dwayne.
All right. Well, welcome to Soccer Today. This is the abridged Olympic version of Soccer Today because we are doing 5 rings daily live during the games at 11. So this is a half-hour version of the show that will be there until August the 22nd when we'll be back to our regular show, Kevin. But I've already asked you how you are today. I asked you how you are.
Maybe that changed. Who knows? But they didn't. I'm doing great. It's quite a story in Rio with the weather today. It's not that great, but I know it's not 5 rings. But good old Spartacus. Good job, buddy.
All right, fair enough. This is soccer. Let's get the focus on. We are going to talk a lot about the Canadian performance against Germany yesterday, an historic win, and break down the women's tournament quite a bit there. We'll touch on the men's tournament as well. A brief mention off the top. The UEFA Super Cup went yesterday. Real Madrid 3.
Oof, that was close, though. That was close. Sevilla almost pulled it off. And you know what my thought was yesterday? What if Sevilla pulls it off? Does it render the entire competition useless?
No.
Okay. It's like the B championship beats the A championship. So what does the A championship stands for?
Well, this is an exhibition game, but Atletico Madrid won it a couple times too when they came in as the UEFA League, the Europa League, the UEFA Cup. Christ, how old is this now, man? I have too many podcasts, Kevin. Anyway, no. So 3-2 Real Madrid. The reason I bring that up is it is the unofficial start of the European season. I guess that and the Community Shield, which was won by Manchester United this past weekend. We didn't mention that at all because possibly I'm blue and bitter. I've forgotten I'm blue and bitter. So there you go. Why would I want to talk about that?
Hey, Duane Zlatan given a trophy to his team, and that's what he said. He's like, you know what? It's not just a gala trophy. It's the first trophy we can win as a team this year, and we're going to win it for you. And he did.
We'll see. We'll see, Zlatan. Speaking of which, we will look to book a guest for Soccer Today this week to give a hyper focus on the Premier League, to do a preview. Probably one of our usual suspects, but we will absolutely be focusing that on probably for Friday's show because the season does kick off in full speed, of course, on Saturday. Exciting times. It's the best of times when both the leagues are going. This is my favorite time of year from August till December when you have
the Olympics, Wade.
And add the Olympics. That's good times. I mean, it's almost unfortunate that the Olympics are on during the first weekend of the Premier League season because otherwise all of my focus would be, oh my God, City plays this weekend and the rest too. I enjoy it all. But this, of course, is going to be a little bit more torn. I will make time out of the Olympic schedule to watch my club play. I probably won't see as much of the first weekend as I normally would when I usually just sit in front of my TV and go for an entire weekend. I love the Premier League. And I know
drool on the side here.
And the French League got started. All the leagues are starting back up in Europe now, so that is exciting times for Soccer Today. Lots to talk about in the days ahead as we've been focused mostly on Major League Soccer, and so far, we started, of course, with Copa America and with the Euro.
But the necessity of the post-Euro world was basically MLS and nothing else.
Yeah, so we'll be starting to spend a lot more time talking about the European side of things, as well as our bread and butter here in North America. Kevin, let's move on from that, though. Canada, what the hell?
Wow, world beaters, Canada, women's side. Duane, who would have thought that I say we, because we almost feel part of that team over the years. The Canadian women's national team has 9 points after 3 games in Rio. Nobody expected that. Nobody at all.
Maybe some of their most hardcore fans that are
that was a wish.
Fans.
No, it could have been a wish, a goal, a perfect scenario, the perfect situation, a perfect storm. Yeah, that could have been. But a prediction? No. Nobody predicted that.
No one that would call themselves any type of serious evaluator of how the women's game works. No, of course not. It didn't seem reasonable that they would get the 3 points. I would have gave it a 1%. maybe a 5%. I would have given this one heading in because Zimbabwe was a pretty easy touch. So maybe 5 or 10% even. But it certainly would have been very low odds. I would have provided for 9 points out of the group stage. And as I said yesterday, and if you want to hear my raw initial reactions from this, you can go back and listen to Five Rings, which we taped at 7 p.m. last night. This, if you're listening to this after the fact, we taped it, 2 hours after the final kick, right?
Yep.
So those reactions at that point were pretty pure. And, to say it again, if you don't listen to the Five Rings show, basically what I said, I pointed out my long history with the program. And just to reiterate that, I have covered that team more than 20 times in person. I have seen them at the World Cup. I have seen them obviously watched them on TV every single game that was available to me since 1999. I was first accredited to watch them in 2002. So it's a personal thing for me. I've watched variations of that program up and down through highs and lows, through a lot of lows and some amazing highs, of course, with the bronze medal in London. And, it's a program that I sometimes have a very ambivalent feeling towards because I am almost too close to it sometimes in terms of my access that I've been privileged enough to have in the past. And that makes me kind of, like I said, I think I'm too critical sometimes, and I think people would agree with that some as well. But yesterday, I was just proud that they were able to pull that through, and that they met expectations in a level that I didn't anticipate, and I thought that was the most impressed I've ever been with them in the entire time that I've watched them. And again, I first covered them in 2002, 14 years ago. So that's 14 years. Wow. That's where I came from.
Exactly, Duane. So no, but it's a shame that the way that all the games unfolded and the games yesterday in Group G as well, it's a shame that Canada has to play France in the quarterfinals. But there's always the other side of the story where to beat the best, you got to beat the best. And if they beat France and eventually maybe face the United States in the final, or a bronze medal game against, say, maybe that would be there, probably Brazil, or a team that would have lost in the other semi. So there's that possibility now that they're only one win away from playing for a medal. It's still very possible. You remember that game against the US? Remember that game against France? There's some history that Canada had some, maybe not the most impressive game, but the result was.
Yeah, look, well, yeah, the results are all that anyone matter or anyone remembers, of course, right? And that's the thing about the Olympics. And I said that after the Zimbabwe game. They didn't look particularly impressive for about 20 minutes in the Zimbabwe game. Now that all three games have been played and I can put them in an entire context, I'm willing to overlook that because that clearly was just a bit of a mental lapse, which will happen to any team. Hell, we saw Mexico losing to Fiji for a long stretch of that game, right? So that's not that's not focus too much on that. That's peak Canadianness if you want to do that. They have managed to step it up and they played a very smart game with 10 women in the first game with Australia, and sort of overcame what was an insanely fast start, then followed by a slow start, if that makes sense. Because other than the first minute of that game, they kind of did start slow, but then they got into that game and they found the right tactical balance in the second half and were incredibly impressive. Against Zimbabwe, they were exactly what you would have thought they would have been in the first half, and then they had a little bit of a slump in the second, and then, of course, they beat Germany, a team that they had quite literally never beaten before. And to me, and I'll ask this. I didn't put a Soccer Today question of the day out today because I was too busy prepping interviews and so on and so forth with the Olympics. And it's going to be tough for the next week or so. Let's not kid ourselves with that stuff. But had I put one out, it would have been, is beating Germany as good as a medal? And I don't know, Kevin, let me ask you, is beating Germany as good as a bronze medal in the Olympics? It's not as good as gold. I'll go there.
No, for sure. And for mainstream optics perception, no, for sure. But for the players themselves, at least they achieved something that they might have thought was impossible. And that might have been, when we talk about glass ceiling and how a performance, even if it was a B squad out there for Canada, resting the big players and Kadisha Buchanan suspended and all those things, when you have like a glass ceiling, I believe the glass ceiling, what I mean by glass ceiling is the glass is a metaphor for what your mind think is the limit of what is possible and what is impossible. And when there's a performance like Canada had against Germany, where you thought it was impossible for Canada to beat the likes of Germany, States, Japan, France, it's possible we've beaten them before, but you had that level of reality. And that game against Germany, even though Germany might have played the game of we don't want to play France, who knows, but they broke that ceiling yesterday.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the Germans, I do think that there's a possibility that the Germans maybe weren't as as motivated. I don't think they were out to lose the game because Germany's a proud program and they would believe that
they were trying too, right? They were trying. We seen the play that we're going forward. It's the same Germany we've seen before. So we didn't see a lack of motivation on the pitch at all that would lend itself to the hypothesis that they took that game lightly.
No. I just mean like the natural inclination of any athlete in a game where there's a little bit of a relaxing because you know that the result. Although there was a scenario which could have potentially seen Germany eliminated outright, but it would have been outrageous situations would have needed to happen for that to occur, and they did not occur.
Well, it's like we'll talk on the men's side a little later on. Brazil almost was very close to this scenario of not making it to the quarters as well. To tie break, but no, there was a very close situation for a big team to be booted out in the group stage.
Yeah, that when that happens, we'll see. But yes, look, where was I? I lost my train of thought there. No, the Germans clearly once they fell behind 2-1, and that was a bit of a counter goal. And I think that that's the smart way for Canada to play these teams. And there wasn't really many. Like people might point to the possession, and they might point to things like the goal line clearance at the end of the game. If you want to be negative about this and suggest that maybe Canada wasn't quite as good as we're making it out to be, but that will happen in any given game. And the fact of the matter is, outside of those goal line clearances at the end of the game, there weren't a lot of clear chances for the Germans. They scored the goal in the penalty. For the rest of the game, Canada defended very well, and they got out on the attack to put pressure on the Germans, just enough pressure on the Germans going forward that the Germans just couldn't throw all 11 forward, right, or all 10 forward. I don't think they put the keeper forward. That might be a bit much. So that was just a good, smart tactical game plan. And then Tancredi's second goal was the perfect example of that, where she got forward, got on a ball, and finished it with a plume. And that was something that I didn't see coming in the lead up these games, and I guess maybe we should go there. I tweeted out, Kevin, when she scored the second goal, can't talk, deleting tweets. I think that summarizes it all. I was trying to hide my tracks. I wasn't really. I was pointing them out. But nonetheless, Melissa Tancredi has shut us all up, has she not?
Exactly. Hopefully it's a performance that can be replicable, because she was not necessarily the same player in the first two games that she was in the third. She was subbed off in the first game when the red card happened to Zakorski. She was the one that took the blunt, literally, of that call when she was subbed off of that game to change the form of that team, and it led to Canada winning that game. They won. They just keep on winning right now. Hopefully it stays on the same course for France. But Tancredi had the opportunity in that third game to play the whole game, and she did so in a very good fashion, being the only scorer for Canada.
Yeah, and look, it's highly symbolic that Canada finally got its breakthrough against Germany in a game that Christine Sinclair did not play, in a game that Buchanan didn't play. I mean, she's a young player, but nonetheless a key component to it. In a game that Diana Matheson's only played a bit role in. That to me was a highly symbolic thing, and it was what maybe the most impressive part of it was. Canada might get another shot with them, and I think maybe here, Kevin, actually, let's take a real quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll get into the rest of the tournament.
Hey, it's Kevin of the Sports Podcasting Network. On SPN, on top of What's the Score, the Sports News Quiz, you can find a plethora of great sports podcasts. Hardwood Radio, Gridiron Radio, Sports, It's in the Game, Scuderia F1, the second most listened to F1 podcast in the whole world, Soccer Today, live radio shows like Open Lines After Dark, MLS Postgame Show, Two Solitudes Soccer Podcast, Off the Woodworks, and much, much more. All that on the Sports Podcasting Network.com.
All right, we're back. Let's look at how the rest of the day played out, because there were more than just Canada playing, of course. And we'll go through the scores real quick and say what that sets up for the quarterfinals, and you do a bit of our quarterfinal preview, and then we'll maybe look at what's happening in the final day of the group stage on the men's side here today. We just scrolling up here, so I get my scores here in Group E. I wish they'd name them A, B, and C.
All right, Group 1, 2, 3. How about that?
Yeah, we had
A, B, C, D, and 1, 2, 3. The men's are A, B, C, D. The women will be 1, 2, 3.
Yes, exactly. All right, Kevin, I'm sorry. Could you you got the scores in front of you there, because I am having trouble finding this on my screen here.
Yes, I have the scores right in front of me. So in the last day of competition in Group 1, South Africa 0, Brazil 0, China, Sweden 0-0 as well, for a standing of Brazil winning their group 7 points, China 4 points, Sweden 4 points, and South Africa 1 point. Tiebreaker gives it to China. Brazil, China moving on. Sweden, best third of this group, moves on as well.
Yes, and 38,415 people to watch the Brazilian women, still below the attendance that their men get. But for that program, and Gavin touched on this in our interview yesterday, there is some remarkable stuff going on where finally the Brazilian women are getting a little bit of attention in their home country, which is well-deserved and long overdue, I should say, and to play in front of close to 40,000. And that's going to build, because if the Brazilians make a final, I suspect that they will, especially if the men crash out, you would anticipate that the entire attention of the country will be on them, and that's something that they deserve and have earned. Whether it shouldn't be tied into the men crashing out. You're right, folks, if you're listening and yelling at your device, but the reality is it is. So I'm looking reality right now, and I want to see them get the attention. If the men crashing out is what it takes, then so be it. Hopefully, in the future, that will mean that they won't require them to, not have the attention by virtue of someone else's failure. So that's the case. They're taking advantage of it. The 0-0 is not ideal, but they played rested a lot of players. It made sense. They had already clinched first place in the group. So most Brazilian fans are pretty savvy. They would understand the concept of squad rotation. So there you go. China, Sweden, not very inspiring, and that's the reward. Second place in Canada's group got them was the ability to play one of those two teams, and the Germans will be pretty heavy favorite against that. We talked about Canada, Germany as well. Moving to the other game in Canada's group, Australia 6, Zimbabwe 1. There was a point there, Kevin, where had Australia scored one more goal, they were 6-0 up. Had they not allowed that goal and instead scored one more themselves, they actually would have overtaken Germany based on the results. But alas, it did not end up that way. Yeah. And they did capture one of the best third place finishers with 4 points, but it went 9 for Canada. Unbelievable. 9 points for Canada. Yep. One of two teams undefeated in this tournament. They're the only team undefeated in this tournament. Who the hell thought that would happen? 4-4-0.
That's what I was saying.
Yes.
Group G, Duane, United States, France, New Zealand, Colombia. The results of the last game of competition in that round robin play. Colombia, United States, 2-2. New Zealand, France, 3-0 for France.
Exactly. And had New Zealand been able to beat France, and Canada would have played New Zealand, but that was probably never going to happen. And that will lead us to the Americans. Abby Wambach. Abby Wambach is not playing for the Americans, nope. Folks. She's most certainly is not in goal, where I was going with this. Hope Solo let a ball go completely through her, which makes me wonder whether the crowd is getting on her a little bit. And there were 30,000 to watch that, which tells you that the Americans draw wherever they go, and they take a big crowd supporting them wherever they go. So that's impressive for them to do that. All right, so the top two third-place teams were 4-4. New Zealand is the unlucky loser in the third place. They go out. John Herdman's former team is no longer in the tournament. That seems to be where they've typically gone out with him and without. So
that's their level. So the quarterfinals are set starting Friday. Brazil, Australia, United States, Sweden, China, Germany, and Canada, France.
Canada, France, the second last game of the tournament on Thursday. They will go off at 7:00 Eastern Standard Time, 7:00 local time. The Brazilians, the Brazilian was 1 hour behind us, local time. Anyway, 1900 it goes off at Brazil, Australia. I can't see the Australians. Well, look, that said, they got back and got that draw against Germany, and they are a good team that had the hiccup against Canada. That said, Brazil has looked so good. This would not, however, be the first tournament in which Brazil has looked amazing in a group stage and then crashed out in the quarters. But you'd have to think that unless the pressure has gotten to them in some way, that they have to be the overwhelming favorite in that game to continue on and then draw up that power semifinal matchup against the U.S., which would draw, you would think, a massive audience worldwide for that one.
It would definitely do. United States, Sweden, Duane, I don't expect Sweden to pull off the upset of beating the favorite and defending champions.
Yeah, well, they just haven't looked good in this tournament either, and that's a big part of that. So they didn't. They finished third in the group, so they're drawing the U.S., and this is they're going to reap what they sowed in that particular case. It would be an upset that I can't even define in terms if Sweden were to win that. So that's why you'll note that I a moment ago said the semifinal matchup against the United States. I didn't really say the United States or Sweden in that, did I? Now that said, this now of course means Sweden's going to win the game because both of us are dismissing them outright.
Hey, go ahead. If that happens, I'm not going to complain. No offense to all our U.S. listeners. I do follow the U.S. women's national team maybe as a second country type of team, but it would favor the first of my two countries if Sweden would beat the US. Who knows if Canada can beat France. China, Germany, Duane, maybe here though. If Germany plays the way they play against Canada, China, slowly a rising team in the world of women's soccer, might pull an upset here. I'm not saying that I'm calling an upset. That would be maybe too far down the road, but possibility if Germany lays an egg.
They'd have to lay a significant egg, and I think losing to Canada might be that thing that gave them a wake-up call, right? Now, Jonathan Tannenwald, when he spoke to us, sort of suggested that Germany might be a team that's a little too old right now, and maybe we saw that against Canada. I would be very surprised if the Chinese, which are still, I think they're a little bit behind. I would say absolutely they're a little bit behind Canada even right now. So they're probably a team that's top 10 clearly, but they're not necessarily ready to break into that, to use John Herdman's term, that those tier 1 teams quite yet. Germany is still a tier 1 team, old or not. So it would be an upset. Certainly, I wouldn't discount it outright because we saw the Germans lose and we saw them tie. They have now they've only beaten Zimbabwe, so they're hardly playing that impressive right now. But then again, Germany has a good history in Brazil, right?
Yes, apparently they do. So if you go back to 2 years ago.
All right, let's go back to Canada, France. And look, we talked this to death in the lead up to it about whether they should, quote unquote, massage the results. They clearly didn't want to do that. They were very excited to beat the Germans. They were very proud to have won that group, and as they should be.
But Duane, they did rest St. Clair. They did. Buchanan was suspended, so they didn't throw the game. They went after the game. They won the game, but they did rest players. So they kind of achieved both sides of that coin.
Yeah, and the French have struggled to. They're very pretty to watch. They're a very possessive team. They're a team that they could play technically very strong, but they've always sort of struggled to have that killer instinct in the final third, especially, and they've especially failed to have a killer instinct in the business end of tournaments. So that is your one caveat there when I talk about they are the favorite, folks. And look, I can say this to this microphone all day, and the people that are listening to us will understand and appreciate that. But the perception here in Canada is that Canada is the hot Canadians coming off the bronze medal looking to avenge the loss to the US in the gold medal final. That's going to be the narrative here in Canada, and we can accept that, and that's fine because they've done enough to not disappoint anyone right now, even if they lose to France. But they won't be the favorite in that one. But nonetheless, it's an opportunity. And, I would have predicted heading into this tournament, Kevin, that Canada would have ended up in a quarterfinal matchup against a team like France and would have gave them probably a 20% chance to maybe even 15% chance to win that game. Here they are. They're in the same matchup, or not the exact same, because who knows what they're going to work out. But they're in a similar matchup to what I would have thought. It's just the way they got there is not the way I would have thought. So I'll give them a 50% chance of winning this game. And if they win this game, they're going to win a medal. That's my prediction. They're going to get by Germany, or they're going to, at the very least, be able to probably, to beat Brazil in the bronze medal game probably. So maybe I'll caveat back on that a little bit. But nonetheless, I think they're in there with a chance to play for a medal if they get past. They will play for a medal if they get past.
But just to finish on Canada, I just saw again the 2 goals of Tancredi on my screen here while we're talking about it. And the second goal is typically Canadian, long ball in the box, and she finishes it with a header on the set piece, which is very typical of the women's national team. It's great that way. I'm not dismissing at all. But the first goal, Duane, her fake, and then she continues and she crossed the ball far the keeper. Haven't seen somebody not name Sinclair do that type of goal for Canada in forever.
Yeah, she had the game of her life. And you know what? She had maybe the co-game of her life because she did the same thing in London. People forget that, and it's probably worth mentioning here as a final thought because I often point to the negatives of London and they do that maybe too much. The positive of London is Tancredi's performance in the second half against Sweden, where they would have been eliminated had she not clawed their way back to that 2-2 draw in London. So there you go. This is a woman now who has established herself as an Olympian in every way. in the fact that she comes up and performs when that matters the most in the Olympic Games. I was joking to someone the other day that Team GB, of course, is not in this because the home nations can't get their act together to figure out a way to get the women in this tournament. And it's about the women, not the men, by the way, guys. It's there's who's losing out here. So I do fault the FAs for not doing that. But it's almost like Canada and Team GB have flipped around. The Team GB, they only can perform in the World Cup, and they do perform in the World Cup, whereas Canada seems to only really show up and perform in the Olympics now and tend to struggle in the World Cup. So maybe they could just flip positions, and Canada just take all the Olympic berths and Team GB take all the World Cup berths. I'm kidding, but nonetheless.
I'll take that.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Look, let's move on from that. As I said, the matchups again, Brazil, Australia, U.S., Sweden. That is the top of the bracket. So one of those four teams will play for gold. Canada, France, China, Germany is the bottom half of the bracket. One of those four teams will play for gold. What is Canada's odds? Do you want me to put an odds on this one right now? Well, they're going to have to beat 1, 2, 3 teams ranked higher than them to win this tournament. I'm not going to say it out loud what that would work out to if I did compound odds, and we'll just leave it well enough alone because I've got myself in enough trouble already by doing math on this show.
Exactly. Let's go on the men's side for 1 second. They're playing some games right now. In Group D, we have, as we speak, Algeria versus Portugal. Portugal is already winning 1-0, and Honduras versus Argentina. It's 0-0. The other games on the docket today. Let's go to Group A with the host Brazil. A lot of pressure on Brazil today. They're playing against Denmark. And right now, if Denmark wins, Brazil is out. If Iraq scores a goal or gets a result and Brazil loses, Brazil is out. So a lot of possibilities in South Africa, Iraq. I actually predict Iraq might score a goal or this will finish 0-0 again, like the other games involving Iraq.
All right, fair enough. Kevin, briefly, we'll touch note in terms of MLS news. It's not MLS news, it's U.S. Open Cup news. It is qualifying its finalists today. New England Revolution have clinched their berth in the U.S. Open Cup final with a 3-1 victory over Chicago. So we won't have a repeat of DC United from a couple years ago when they were the worst team in the league and won the U.S. Open Cup. Tonight, the LA Galaxy, which never really go deep in these tournaments, they are deep this time, will play Dallas in what is the marquee matchup of this round to determine who the final representative will be in that one. And that will mean, because you have to bid on who hosts these finals, that the U.S. Open Cup is either going to be held at StubHub, at Gillette, or at what the hell do they call the stadium in Dallas nowadays? So it used to be Pizza Hut Park,
Toyota
which was the best
Stadium?
name. Yes, whatever. I'm going to call it Pizza Hut Park because that's a great name. We should just go with that.
The Hut. Yeah, just quickly, there were still a few games left in the Olympic men's tournament today. Colombia, Nigeria, Japan, Sweden in Group B. And to finish Group C, Germany, Fiji, South Korea, Mexico.
All right, and we will review that tomorrow on Soccer Today. And as I said, later on this week, we will most certainly make sure that we have someone on to talk about the Premier League start of the season and the European start of the season as we turn our attention to that. But on that note, I've got to turn my attention back to the Five Rings, not necessarily the podcast, but the actual event that is taking place on my TV screen behind me. Go Daniel Nestor and Vasco Pospisil. I can never say that really quickly. I just call him Pops there. Anyway, they will play for medal today, and Daniel Nestor, be great to see him go out with a medal in his career, eh?
Yeah, and I just wish I had a kayak and go down the course just like at the Olympics. That seems so much more fun. Just rapids. I don't know. It just seems so fun.
There you go. You can go to the Ottawa River and hire someone to do it with you.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's not the same. I'll probably die. So
there you go. All right. On that note, that's going to be it for today. Hope you enjoyed the two shows or the one show if you just listened to the one. Otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow. And until that time, Kevin, as always, I'll let you say goodbye.
Noon tomorrow for Soccer Today, 11 a.m. for Five Rings Daily. And until then, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.